Welcome back to The Explainer. I'm really glad you're joining us today because we're going to be doing something a little different. We are taking a highly focused, deeply analytical look at a truly chilling piece of visual evidence. You know, when catastrophic events happen, our human perception usually just gets completely overwhelmed by the sheer horror of it all. We see the fire, we see the destruction, and our brains naturally struggle to process the actual mechanics of what's unfolding right in front of us. We get bombarded with these dramatic images, but we rarely slow down to actually read what that imagery is telling us, and honestly, just as importantly, what it isn't telling us. So our goal today isn't just to gawk at a disaster. We are going to decode it frame by frame, applying strict physics and aerodynamic logic to figure out exactly what happened up there in the sky. If you're ready to move past the initial shock and really grasp the mechanics of this event, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Okay, let's dive right into this. What you're looking at is a raw, startling composite sequence. It captures a massive, four-engine heavy aircraft just plunging from the sky, ending in a massive fireball. Just take a second to absorb the sheer scale of what's happening across these four panels. When we first look at something like this, our instinct is purely emotional, right? We feel that visceral shock. But as focused learners, we really need to train our eyes to look right past the tragedy and see the raw data. Every single angle, every wing position, the relationship of the plane to the ground, it's all a distinct data point just waiting to be analyzed.
So the big question we have to ask ourselves is, what exactly are we looking at here? We need to completely pivot from that initial emotional reaction and get into a strictly analytical headspace. We're going to question the exact physical mechanics captured in each and every frame. Think about it. We're talking about an aircraft that can weigh upwards of 400,000 pounds fully loaded, spanning over 150 feet across the wings. How does a colossal machine like that, literally designed to master the air, just suddenly fall out of it? By breaking down this composite, we can isolate the exact sequence of aerodynamic failures that turned a highly complex flying machine into, well, a falling object.
Here is the exact visual progression we're going to cover today. Step 1, the steep climb. Step 2, the wing drop and stall. Step 3, ground proximity. And finally, Step 4, the explosion. All right, Section 1, the extreme unnatural pitch. Now, what's really interesting about this image is how it's laid out. Because the aircraft is rapidly losing altitude and because of how the camera captured the descent, the chronological timeline actually reads from right to left. Kind of counterintuitive, I know. So focus your attention all the way over on the far right panel. We're looking at the aircraft's attitude, which in aviation basically means its orientation relative to the horizon. Look at the nose of this massive four-engine plane. It is pitched almost straight up into the sky. There's no way around it. This is a highly unnatural position for any heavy cargo or passenger jet. I mean, these planes are built for level flight and slow gradual climbs, not going vertical. When an aircraft pitches up this drastically, physics takes over, and it takes over fast. A heavy aircraft completely relies on forward momentum cutting through the air to generate lift under its wings. But when you yank the nose up to this extreme degree, you are essentially exposing the massive surface area of the plane's underbelly directly to the oncoming wind. It acts like a colossal air brake. The airspeed just bleeds off incredibly fast. Contrast this with a military fighter jet, right? A fighter has an insane thrust-to-weight ratio, meaning its engines are actually powerful enough to push it straight up like a rocket, even if the wings aren't generating any lift at all. But a heavy transport jet, it absolutely does not have that luxury. Without enough forward speed to push air over the wings, those wings just can't generate the lift required to hold all that immense weight in the sky. It simply cannot sustain flight at this angle.
Moving on to Section 2, the inevitable fatal stall. So let's move chronologically to the next phase. Look closely at the second panel from the right. The situation here has completely degraded. The aircraft banks severely to the right, and its wings are suddenly almost perpendicular to the ground. Why does this happen? Well, because as the airspeed dropped off during that steep climb we just talked about, the wings literally stopped flying. Think about how the massive weight of a plane like this is distributed. You've got engines weighing thousands of pounds each just slung out under the wings, plus a really heavy nose structure. When that forward momentum dies, that intense, concentrated mass ruthlessly pulls the plane down. The nose violently drops under its own weight, and it drags the right wing down right along with it. The plane is literally falling out of the sky at this point.
What we're objectively witnessing here is called an aerodynamic stall. And look, I need to clear something up right now because it's a common misconception. An aerodynamic stall has absolutely nothing to do with the engines failing. Actually, the engines could be running at absolute maximum power during a stall. A stall is entirely about airflow. It's a sudden, total reduction in the lift forces generated by the wings.
Just picture this. Normally, air flows nice and smoothly over the curved top surface of a wing, right? That creates a low-pressure zone that gently sucks the wing upward. But when the nose is pulled up way too high, the critical angle of attack, that's the angle between the wing and the oncoming air, is exceeded. The air literally can't hug the curve anymore. It detaches from the wing's surface, turning into this turbulent, tumbling mess of useless air. The lift collapses entirely, and the plane effectively becomes a 400,000-pound falling brick.
And this brilliantly, albeit terrifyingly, illustrates the physics of a heavy jet losing its battle with gravity. Once those wings stall, especially in a large transport aircraft, the pilots rapidly lose command over the flight controls. That severe rightward roll we're seeing, that isn't an intentional maneuver. Not at all. It's the chaotic, completely uncommanded result of a total loss of aerodynamic stability. Gravity has just completely overtaken the aircraft, forcing it to this deadly roll as it plummets.
Let's look at Section 3, Impact and Devastation.
Now focus your attention on the second panel from the left. I really want you to notice the chilling sense of scale provided by the vehicles on the ground here. You can clearly see a row of everyday buses on a nearby road. Comparing the size of those standard buses to the colossal size of the 4-engine aircraft diving just right above them, it's honestly horrifying. It really emphasizes the plane's incredibly steep downward trajectory. The nose is pointing almost directly at the ground, and it's hurtling downward with immense accelerating force.
You know, in aviation, altitude and airspeed are basically your life insurance. If you enter a stall at, say, 30,000 feet, a well-trained crew actually has the time and the vertical space to execute a standard recovery. That involves intentionally pushing the nose down toward the ground to let gravity rebuild that forward airspeed and then smoothly pulling back up once the wings are generating lift again. But given the extreme proximity to the ground we just saw with those buses, this aircraft was far too low and moving far too slow. Recovering from a stall essentially requires trading altitude for airspeed, and here, there was absolutely zero altitude left to trade. Given the dive angle, recovering from this specific stall was mathematically and physically impossible.
Which leads us to the final frame on the far left. A massive explosion and fireball erupting on the ground. Look, there really isn't much to analyze in terms of aerodynamics here. The sheer kinetic energy of well over 300,000 pounds of metal impacting the Earth at hundreds of miles per hour, combined with tens of thousands of gallons of highly flammable jet fuel, it creates this inferno. It's the tragic, inevitable outcome of the physical sequence we just traced from the right side of the frame. Let's just pause here for a second and let the reality of that outcome sink in.
Finally, Section 4, The Limits of Visual Evidence.
So here is the absolute crucial takeaway from all of this. While the visual evidence of how the plane crashed is undeniable, we clearly saw the extreme pitch, the aerodynamic stall, and the deadly dive, this image cannot tell us why it crashed. We have no idea what the root cause of that initial steep climb was. This is exactly why accident investigators rely so heavily on black boxes. The flight data recorders and cockpit voice recorders, those boxes give us thousands of specific parameters, control inputs, engine thrust levels, hydraulic pressure, and what the crew was actually saying. Without them, we're effectively blind to the real root cause. Was there an internal mechanical failure? Did heavy cargo inside the fuselage suddenly break loose and slide to the back, drastically throwing off the center of gravity and pulling the nose up against the crew's will? Did an automated flight system glitch out? We simply don't know from looking at this. The photograph is incredibly dramatic, sure, but it provides almost zero actionable data for the root cause itself. And that leaves us with a pretty vital question to ponder today. Are we too quick to demand a complete narrative from a single visceral image? In our modern media landscape, we see a shocking picture or a crazy breaking news clip and we immediately want the full story, right? We want the definitive cause, we want the why instantly. But as we've hopefully learned in this explainer today, seeing an event unfold is vastly different from truly understanding its origin. So, the next time you're confronted with dramatic visual evidence, I really challenge you to pause and ask yourself, what am I actually seeing here? And maybe more importantly, what am I missing? Thanks so much for exploring the mechanics of this with me. I'll see you in the next explainer.